as we kind of cocoon and go inward and winter, as the seasons are kind of wintering, what does that look like for us who may get triggered by going to family events, may get triggered because you're not seeing family around this time, may get triggered because maybe you are feeling more isolated and lonely. So if some of you have a trigger around going back and seeing your families, you don't want to go back because perhaps you have something in the back of your mind saying it's never going to change. So that is one way of dealing with it. The other way is, what if I can come at this with love? I am more willing and more open to have a conversation. No expectations at all, but I'm going as an adult to meet certain members of my family with zero expectations except for being present. And knowing that their journey is their journey and they will continue to say the same things they always have said, but now you know how to take care of the needs of your own inner child, that you can reparent them without needing to seek validation, approval, apologies from those people around you that hurt you when you were little, because you are now able to give that to yourself. Hey loves, do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are tuning into this. It helps grow the show more than you know. Thank you so much again and enjoy. Do you ever feel like you are carrying the weight of old wounds that happen to surface, or maybe you get triggered by in a conversation with somebody, in a conflict with your loved one, or maybe if you are just scrolling on social media and you see something that completely triggers you, and maybe, just maybe, it brings you back to the younger version of yourself. Maybe the younger version of yourself that didn't get their needs met, that maybe felt abandoned, maybe felt neglected, maybe felt left out, maybe felt made fun of, or they didn't belong. Well, if you've experienced any of those, welcome to the Brave Table. I'm your host, Dr. Neeta, and this is your destination, your oasis to be all things just a little bit more brave in your actions, in your relationships, and in your life. And if you are new, I just want to be the first one to welcome you. If you stumbled across this for whatever reason, somebody sent this episode to you, welcome. I'm giving you a big, big hug because this is your oasis for all kinds of healing. And today I want to start by sharing this affirmation. I deserve wonderful things. I am worthy of all the beautiful moments and things that flow easily into my life. I am worthy. This is actually from our That Suck Now What conversation card deck and affirmation card deck that you could actually get from thatsucknowwhat.com. So on the Brave Table, we have spoken so much about healing our inner child and really working towards those triggers and feelings that tend to come up. And I know around the holidays, around the end of the year, when things either tend to slow down or maybe busy up, we can feel certain ways, and we can feel like we want to cocoon and go inward because, of course, the weather might be getting colder. The days are also getting shorter depending on where you are and where you live in the world. And it is easier to get super emo and be in our feels. And I don't know about you, but there were many, many years around December time, after going through as many losses as I'd been through, that there was space to actually feel. And I didn't want to sit in those uncomfortable feelings. And so I would try to bury myself in busyness until I couldn't. And I think that many times December for a lot of people is that month where a lot of things bubble up to the surface, whether it's in relationship, in partnership, with friendships, with family, because you're going to see family or you're doing family functions and events and things like that. You're going home for the holidays. And how do we equip you with tools to begin to perhaps maybe explore that side of yourself? Maybe that side of the little girl or the little boy that didn't spend time in understanding or knowing if their needs were being met. And maybe, just maybe, that little girl or boy didn't feel seen, didn't feel heard. And so now at some point, this is playing out in your relationships in one way or another. So how do we begin to start healing or reparenting your inner child? I didn't really understand this fully until I had my own children, how profound this healing part could actually be. And it was because I'd done several different parts of healing my inner child in many ways, connecting to the little girl. I would often keep the picture of myself. This was, I think I was in the first grade, and I had it was St. Patrick's Day, and I was wearing green. I think I was dressed like a leprechaun. And it was such a cute picture of the little Neeta, but it was such a big reminder. And for many, many years, I would have this picture of myself on my altar. And this was my altar that I would just thank the little girl. I would thank her for being so brave. I would thank her for being so wise when she had to grow up fast, so open to just doing whatever she needed to do, not closing herself off to people, because little Neeta had to make chai for everyone. Little Neeta had to learn how to wash the dishes early and cook food for a bunch of people coming into the house, visiting her mom when she was sick with cancer, and all of these things. And I think as we kind of cocoon and go inward and winter, as the seasons are kind of wintering, what does that look like for us who may get triggered by going to family events, may get triggered because you're not seeing family around this time, may get triggered because maybe you are feeling more isolated and lonely? And I want to bring knowledge to that and spaciousness for that, because so often in the year, we are so busy. And this is one of the times where we can reflect, and maybe we can shift that meaning of whatever we needed to have that wasn't met when we were younger, that we can now meet ourselves with. And we can give our inner child what he or she needs, because we are now paying attention to what that little version of you is desiring. Maybe it is spaciousness. Maybe it is gentleness. Maybe it is a bubble bath. Maybe it is a long walk. Maybe it is splurging and going retail shopping. Maybe it is writing a letter to that younger part of yourself that truly needs to be seen. And I think a lot of times when I've navigated motherhood and seeing my littles, now I have two, but when I saw my son and just him being just a baby and being able to see myself in him, and how much compassion I then had for my mom who was working, who it was just like a full circle moment where she didn't have a lot of the resources. They were going through some hardships around that time. And I think that we fail to forget and we fail to recognize the journey and the paths of our ancestors until we then go through the path of becoming a parent on our own. And for those of you who don't have kids, but you're very curious about reparenting your inner child, you can actually begin this journal prompt. What did I need to hear as a child? Or how can I show up in the way that the little girl in myself needed to show up as? And a lot of times we could be so okay with our childhood, but maybe our inner tween, or that time period between 9 to 12 was the part that needed the most care and healing, because maybe you were bullied as a young kid, or maybe your inner teen needed the support and love and attention because the inner teen, like myself, needed to grow up early, had so many responsibilities. And now maybe it's acting out, or it's playing out in a way where all you want to do is not have those responsibilities. You want to go out and have fun and do all of these things instead of adulting. But what is it that your inner child or inner teen could use a little bit more of? And it could even be great to set up your altar and put a picture of your inner child, maybe the version of you that was under 7, and then the version of you that was anywhere around 9 to 12 years old, and then a version of you that is 13 to 18 years old, and see what did that little person, the version of yourself that was under 6, the version of yourself in these eras of your life, what did they need to hear the most? Because that's the journey of being able to reparent your inner child and to give them the space and the love and the attention that they need. Now, most of us, if we are in relationships, friendships, female friendships, male friendships, or partnerships, or even in our relationships with our kids, we tend to attract maybe circumstances, situations, setbacks that we needed to heal and learn as a child. And a lot of times this happens when we go back and see our families during the holidays. So if some of you have a trigger around going back and seeing your families because you weren't met in a certain way, or you were gaslit, or you were told X, Y, and Z, or you were scolded a lot, or you were compared to other people, maybe, just maybe, you don't want to go back because perhaps you have something in the back of your mind saying, it's never going to change. They are never going to change. My family is never going to change. I need to protect that little part of myself. So that is one way of dealing with it. The other way is, what if I can come at this with love and grace and support and see some of the most beautiful insights? And also, maybe now, in this era of my life, I am more willing and more open to have a conversation. No expectations at all, but I'm going as an adult to meet certain members of my family with zero expectations except for being present. And knowing that, that journey, their journey is their journey, and they will continue to say the same things they always have said. But now, because you know how to take care of the needs of your own inner child, that you can reparent them without needing to seek validation, approval, apologies from those people around you that hurt you when you were little, because you are now able to give that to yourself. And I think that is a beautiful lesson of how we can pour back into our inner child. And this is the beauty of inner child work. And this is the beauty of reparenting yourself, because you can now give yourself, you can now give your children, if you have them, or your pets, the love, the undivided attention, the presence that maybe you yourself didn't have. And we always, if you choose to, I think there is a beauty in the ability to be able to see every person that comes into our life, that the courage to heal parts of ourself that need healing. So for example, the parts of ourself that get triggered because somebody shared something and maybe they didn't mean it, but you either took it the wrong way. So you can actually reframe that. Did I mean to misunderstand that person? Or was that person coming from a place of love? Or did I take an offense to that because there's parts of me that are still kind of in that wounding that my younger part of myself is still feeling, and I need to reconcile that. So how can I recreate a new meaning? Maybe it's, if you were told, for example, as a child, no, you're not going to eat candy. You're only going to eat candy on Halloween. And not to say that around the holidays you're going to binge eat and eat all the candy and chocolate that you want, because there are people who have done that. But maybe in essence, you will acknowledge the little parts of yourself. And maybe with the younger people in your life, your minis, your children, you are now having a different dialogue with them. You can now say, you know what? Let's enjoy some of these pieces together. I know you have a lot of this candy, or I know we're going to go to the grocery store. Let's pick out some good ones together, because then they are creating a different memory. You are also creating a different memory, and you're anchoring that memory, meaning you're then rewiring new neural pathways because you've made a choice. It's like calling maybe your estranged uncle or auntie or cousin or childhood friend that you haven't seen in years. And maybe you're having that brave conversation without any strings attached. And maybe you're like, hey, I haven't spoken to you in a really long time. You came into my mind. I just wanted to let you know how I was feeling, or I just wanted to let you know that you were on my mind. How are you doing? No expectations. Zero. And just maybe you've healed that younger part of yourself that needed to have an apology. You've healed that younger part of yourself that needed an explanation, why that person ghosted, why that person wasn't there. And maybe you're also unlocking healing for that other person who may have wronged you or may have done something that didn't meet your needs when you were younger. My question is, how can you meet your own needs now instead of expecting it from other people? Because not that we're meant to be living on a mountain doing life by ourselves, but I think when we can pour back into the younger versions of ourselves that didn't know better, that didn't have the voice to share or communicate what their desires were, we can do this in small ways. We can do this by setting up an altar. We can do this with our children, reparenting them and stopping that generational trauma. Not screaming and yelling at them for opening up presents before Christmas. Or maybe you do have a new ritual that you do because you are now rewiring a new neural pathway. Maybe you do go back to the holidays because growing up, you never did and you never saw your parents together, and that left you with an imprint that family is so important. So now you get to recreate new rituals and ceremonies that feel really good and nourishing for your family unit. So take some time to really see what feels really good and nourishing for you right now in this season, in this stage, an era of you. Because I think the first part of this is checking in with yourself and pausing and noticing how you feel in your body and noticing which parts of myself are reacting to this. Like if you get reacted towards maybe a comment somebody makes, somebody made a joke and you got offended or you get really triggered, oftentimes it's the way we react to things. And so what parts of our inner child did not feel safe? So it allowed us to have a response or a trauma response or a reactionary response in this way that maybe it's an invitation for us to put our hand over our heart and say, ooh, I acknowledge you. That made you feel scared. That made you feel triggered. That made you feel unsafe. And from that point, how can we then make a different decision? Because we have given ourselves spaciousness to pause, to reflect, and to see, is that my inner child? Is that my inner tween? Is that my inner teen? And to be gentle with the little versions of ourselves that are all within us. And it only comes out during the most joyful times of the year, which is usually when we go back and see our families, or when we go and go to family events or go back home to the cities that we grew up in. It only happens around that time. So if you are curious about making amends, or if you're curious about perhaps bringing it back home full circle to you, because maybe you have the time or you want to carve out time, focus on your reactions. Who is actually reacting? Is it the 6-year-old that got abandoned? Is it the 10-year-old that got bullied? Is it the 13-year-old that just wanted to have her way but got shut down every single time? Is it the 17-year-old that got made fun of behind closed doors? Who is that needs that love, that attention, that softness, that gentleness? And of course, if this stirs up emotions and feelings that you want to be able to work with, please don't do this alone. There's so many avenues of getting the support with coaching, with therapists, with other people that can help facilitate this dialogue with you, because we can journal. Of course, we can set an altar. We can reframe certain avenues of how we want to feel met in a relationship. But the best way to do this is with someone else, if you need that support. All right, so that is all I have for you this week. I am so curious how this has landed. I'm so curious how you are going to pay attention to healing your inner child, reparenting your inner child. This is the work that helps us reflect, maybe even at the end of the year. And mind you, I used to do this for years upon years when I didn't find it safe to go back home. I'd rather stay in my apartment in San Francisco or travel the world because there was things that I was running away from. I was running away from sitting in those uncomfortable feelings. But when you allow yourself and give yourself permission to do that, there is a healing that happens. And this is the work. This is the beauty of it. You can choose to do it alone with your journal. You can choose to do it with a coach that you love, a therapist that you love, or a trusted confidant that you love. But don't let this be something that gets to pop up on the surface every year around the end of the year. So with that said, if you've loved this episode, if you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss a beat. It helps us grow the show more than you know. And thank you so much for being here week after week. I hope this adds tremendous value and changes your perspective and allows you to be brave in navigating some of the icky, emotional, uncomfortable feelings to be and step into the next iteration, the next evolution of who we are yearning to be. So on that note, I will see you next time. Don't forget to be just a little bit more brave.